All right, Charlie Pellet with the latest on trading from New York. Thank you so much. Meanwhile, here in Washington, we're awaiting the latest from Capitol Hill after the second meeting in as many days between the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, who, of course, has threatened to act on her motion to vacate the Speaker as soon as this week. Before the meeting that was scheduled for 12:30 p.m. today, she said she's clear in what her demands to Mike Johnson are. She would like to see the Hastert rule followed, which means a majority of the majority must support any bill. She wants no more funding for Ukraine, to defund the special counsels who are looking into former President Donald Trump, and avoid a shutdown before the election by passing ACR to automatically enact a 1% spending cut. The question is, what leverage does the Congresswoman have over the Speaker? Is he likely to agree to any of this, especially when Democrats have said that they will act to table a motion to vacate if indeed it is brought forward? So we want to get reaction to all of this now from inside the Republican conference. I'm pleased to say joining me here on Bloomberg Television and Radio live from Capitol Hill is Congressman Byron Donalds, the Republican from Florida. Congressman, welcome back to Bloomberg. It's great, as always, to have you. What is your understanding as to what could go down in your chamber in regard to this motion to vacate in the coming days?
Well, I think what's likely is that the motion will be tabled by large amounts of the Republican conference, and from what we're hearing, members of the Democrat conference. Look, at the end of the day, there have been questions from many conservatives about a lot of the bills that have passed on the House floor, where a majority of Democrats have been voting for those measures. But I believe that right now, going through a battle for the speakership is not in the best interest of the Republican conference or in Congress overall. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to get tabled, and then we're going to move on. We're going to move on to the appropriations process for the next fiscal year.
Congressman, is this so much about Democrats being willing to protect the House Speaker, which may be the thing that keeps him with the gavel in hand, or about the support from former President Donald Trump? To what extent does he influence the outcome here?
I think President Trump has made his views known that he doesn't want to see the House go through this motion to vacate process right now. So I think right now you have a lot of people up here on both sides of the aisle who just want to basically get to the election season and let the American people have their voices heard about which way they want Washington to go. Do we want to continue to go down the line of the crazy agenda of Joe Biden and the Democrats that's led to massive open borders, massive inflation, on the verge of World War III? Or do we want to go back to Trump-era policies which actually improved wages in our country, kept inflation low, led to a more peaceful planet across the board, and actually secured our nation? And so that's the conversation I think every member on Capitol Hill wants to have. I think we're probably going to get to that. We're definitely going to get to it. I think the motion to vacate is probably going to get tabled in the process.
Well, Congressman, you just mentioned there the border, which, of course, is something that your conference has focused immensely on and passed H.R. 2, though with no Democratic support. Never got the chance to vote on that bipartisan border deal that was reached between Senate negotiators and the White House. President Biden has, though, expressed interest in doing something on the border legislatively, trying perhaps that effort again. Do you expect you will have a chance to vote on something else before the election?
No, I don't, because what Joe Biden wants to do is play politics with the issue of securing our nation. Even the border bill that was in the Senate, that was pure politics. The Senate didn't even bring it up for a vote. That's how toxic that bill was. And so the reality is that what Joe Biden wants to do is give a fig leaf, give a patina to the American people right before the election to demonstrate that he cares about securing the border. The truth is he does not. He never has, because if he cared about border security, he would have worked with Republicans at any point over the last 18 months. He has refused to do that. And over the course of his entire presidency, we've now seen anywhere from 8 to 10 million illegal immigrants come into the United States. So he doesn't care about the border. He uses it for his own political gain. And now he wants to do something right before the election because his poll numbers suck, because he's been worse at his job.
Well, of course, he had been working with one Republican, at least Senator James Lankford, who helped negotiate that bipartisan border deal. But moving on, Congressman, there is another issue with which the president has been grappling. In fact, he's on Capitol Hill today. I understand you weren't there at his remarks, but he did give an address on anti-Semitism. It's talking about how there is a freedom to free speech in this country, not, though, room for hate speech or violence on college campuses, given what we are seeing across the country, including schools like GW, where I know you yourself visited here in Washington. What else would you like to see be done to address this issue? Is the speech itself enough?
No, the president's speech is not enough. It's 9 or 10 days too late. But why are we surprised? Joe Biden is no leader. He's late to every crisis that faces our country, including the rise of anti-Semitism from the radical Democratic left. So, no, the speech is simply not enough. What we should be talking about right now is the fact that you have students whose civil rights have been violated. So these schools, which do not take campus security seriously, we should be invoking Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and we should be defunding these institutions if they're not going to protect the civil rights of students. It's that simple. And this goes back very clearly. If you go back to the civil rights era, the reason why Title VI was put into the Civil Rights Act is because you had black students whose civil rights were not being protected on college campuses. So if it was good enough then, it should be good enough now.
Well, Congressman, when we think more widely about what many of these protests have emanated from, obviously it is the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, where we have seen tens of thousands of Palestinian lives lost. There are questions now as to whether or not Israel will be moving forward with a further ground invasion into Rafah, potentially resulting in more loss of civilian life. Would you be supportive of any alteration to U.S. policy toward Israel if Israel were to do that when the administration has warned against doing so, conditioning aid, for example?
No, I don't think we should do that. This is something where Hamas committed a disgusting atrocity against the people of Israel on October 7th. And so what the United States government should do is stand behind its ally. If Hamas refuses to surrender, that is because Hamas is a terrorist organization that literally hides behind women and children in Gaza. They would prefer to see Palestinians die so that Hamas can live. I know that's very strong language for your network, but that's the truth of what's happening overseas. And so Hamas should have surrendered long ago. The only reason why they haven't surrendered to this point is because they are getting political coverage from a lot of news stations around the world and from the radical left in the Democrat Party, who continue to give them cover. When it comes to the Palestinians in Gaza who have died in this conflict, nobody wants to see the loss of life. But when you have Hamas hide behind women and children, using them as human shields, there is going to be loss of life. And they do that for one very important reason. Hamas hides behind women and children because they believe that Israel will weaken and not follow through with eliminating Hamas. But Israel's resolve is high. They should continue the incursion into Rafah as we speak. They should not stop from doing that, because if you let Hamas hide behind women and children and then rebuild themselves by sending aid over there, which, by the way, Hamas right now is stealing the aid for their own purposes from the Palestinian people. If you allow them to survive, you're only going to invite more attacks in the future. I think Israel's doing the right thing. They should proceed forward. And the White House, led unfortunately by Joe Biden and the Secretary of State, Mr. Blinken, they should stand behind our ally, not behind Hamas.
Well, Congressman, do you not think the White House has done that to this point, considering we have not seen conditions put on aid, and we have heard many times expressed by Biden and other officials within the administration that the U.S. alliance with Israel is ironclad?
Listen, we've heard the words from the Biden administration, but when you go into where they've been talking with the Israeli government behind closed doors, what you've seen is them putting pressure on Israel, trying to get them to change the battle plans that the IDF is going through right now. They've been saber rattling to Israel, saying that there are certain conditions that the United States wants to see and how they proceed in this conflict. That is not the appropriate response from our government. That is a cowering response response from our government, which is sad to see, because at the same time, you have the Biden administration is back channeling to the Iranian regime, trying to cut a new Iranian deal with that regime. And we all know that the Iranians are the backstop for Hamas. Hamas is a puppet regime of Iran. And so when you have Tony Blinken and President Biden going behind closed doors to back channel to the Iranians and then also to limit what Israel can do, then I would tell you, no, the speeches might sound good, but what's happening in reality has not been good and not supportive of Israel.
All right, Congressman Byron Donald, the Republican from Florida, thank you so much for joining us on Bloomberg Television and Radio live from Capitol Hill. We appreciate your time, sir.